Feeling inspired, being creative, getting motivated, these things always used to feel kind of ephemeral to me in some degree. There are some days where you've got it, where you're just raring to go and life is awesome. But there are also days where the thought of getting out of bed is just too much to handle. Inspiration and creativity can be random sometimes. They can strike whenever and wherever, and usually that's in the shower. But what if we could stay in the mood all the time? What if we could stay inspired all the time, on demand, whenever we needed to? Over the past decade of me working in different creative fields and having to be creative and inspired on demand, I found that inspiration can be tamed. It can be a little bit less random and a little bit more deliberate. This is important so that as a professional you can get in, get the job done, and continue to make great things day in and day out. And over the years I've learned a bunch of different lessons on how to stay inspired more often, and I'd love to share those in this video with you. The first lesson is about having a perspective on how creativity and inspiration work. Because while they're two separate things, they're very much interconnected. See, how creativity works is that it's the connection of two ideas together. And sometimes these ideas can be completely new, they can be fresh, something we've never seen before, but sometimes they can also be old. They can be ideas we've explored in the past, they can be things that have been lying dormant in our minds for quite some time. Creativity is the connection of these ideas. And inspiration is what happens when these ideas and these connections become emotionally charged. When the idea that you've had seems so cool and so obvious that you just want to do it straight away. Creative thought plus strong emotion equals creative compulsion. And this is what inspiration is. Inspiration is simply the feeling of being compelled to execute on the creative idea that you've just had. And having this perspective on how it all works is helpful because once we realize that, this whole creativity and inspiration thing is simply a game of creating ideas and connecting them together, it becomes easier to hack how creativity works and how inspiration works, and being able to make something that's a little bit more predictable in our lives every single day. The next lesson I've learned is about mindset. In Steven Pressfield's book, The War of Art, which is a book that I highly recommend every single creative to read, he talks a lot about this idea of the creative professional and the creative amateur, and the professional versus the amateur. See, the professional has a job to do, and there's a mindset shift in how that professional approaches the job at hand. The professional does it with objectivity, with analysis, with systems, whereas the amateur approaches it with haphazardness and takes things as it comes. And this idea can apply to any creative field, whether or not you're doing photography or design or illustration, and it can also apply to any amount of intensity that you're doing it as well, whether it's a hobby or whether it's your full-time gig. This idea can also be applied to inspiration as well. We can turn inspiration into a system, into a craft, into a process. If we schedule in time for inspiration, whether that's every day, whether it's every week, whatever it is, and we show up like a professional every single time, what we'll find is we can start to deliberately create opportunities for it to appear, and it will start to appear less randomly and more predictably. We will understand how to turn it on, so to speak, because we've done it so many times. And that leads us to be less susceptible to the ebbs and the flows of whether or not we feel like it at any given point in time. For me, one of the ways that I do this is in my morning routine. So I run a shortcut every morning that opens up about a dozen or so different browser tabs. Half of those browser tabs are all different sites and different aggregators that allow me to catch up with the world very quickly and catch up with the things that are important to me. But the other half are sites that I'm looking for active inspiration from, different mediums and different areas and those kind of things. And I'll flick through those sites every single morning so that my subconscious mind has new input every single day to draw from. In this way, I'm constantly feeding my mind new sources of different inspiration, and that allows me every single day to have more opportunities for inspiration to show up. The next lesson is around the things that you consume. Whether you realize it or not, you're influenced by everything you subject yourself to, whether it's the TV shows that you watch, the movies, the games you play, your environment, your friends, your family, everything. Every single thing that you're bringing into your life, consciously or subconsciously, is affecting you in some way. And because of this, we've got to be careful about what we decide to consciously bring into our minds. And specifically when it comes to consuming things, I'm a big believer in quality input equals quality output. The quality of things that you consume determine the quality of things that you create and put out into the world. As an example, if you're an aspiring filmmaker and you watch a lot of B-grade films and videos from other filmmakers that perhaps haven't been in the game of filmmaking for that many years, then what you'll find is that some of those techniques will filter into your own work. Either subconsciously or consciously, you will be influenced by these things. That might be what you're looking for, and if it is, that's great. But if your objective is to be the next Christopher Nolan, for example, then you should watch Christopher Nolan films, right? And you should also watch the films that inspired Christopher Nolan so that you have an understanding and an idea of the combinations of creativity and inspiration that led him to the point of success to where he is today. See, you have not only the ability, but the permission to be inspired by the things that are aspirational to you. So I think it's important that you do that. On the topic of quality input, the next lesson I've learned is about drawing inspirations from your medium, or not. So one of the hardest things to do as a creator is to stand out. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? If you're a photographer, a filmmaker, an illustrator, a designer, whatever it is, there's already a set of established styles, established trends, established techniques, established visual language that most people follow. So what do, right? Well, once you've been in the game for a little bit and you have built up your skills to a certain level of competence, what I've found to be extremely effective is to stop looking at your medium for inspiration. So if you're a photographer, stop looking at photos. If you're a filmmaker, stop looking at films. If you're a designer, stop it with the UI kits already. Look beyond or aside your medium for inspiration. So if you're a photographer, look to cinematography, anime, design, drawing. If you're a designer, look to photography, look to drawing, look to writing, look to something completely different or just tangential. What you'll find by looking into these different industries and these different mediums is you'll find associations that you've never seen before. Things that are fresh, things that are new. The deeper you get into a different medium, you might even find that you really, really enjoy it. And this is a super great way to start to make fresh, new creative connections so that you can feel more inspired more often. This is also a great way to start to make your work unique. This is the starting point to having a truly unique style, right? This is the point where you start to fuse your own personal interests into your work, right? And these personal interests exist outside of your current medium, and they make your existing medium fresh. And finally, the last lesson that I've learned about inspiration is something that's really dear to my heart, and this is the topic of momentum. Specifically in the context of inspiration, you'll find that if you're scheduling regular time to be inspired, if you're regularly creating new things all the time, you'll find that the more that you show up, the more inspiration will show up too. Think of it like a bank. Every time you see something new that sparks your interest, it gets added into your subconscious mind, into your bank, right? And the more things you have in your bank, the more potential you have for these connections to occur, just because there's more stuff, right? Now, when you're first starting out, there's not a lot there in your bank, but if you show up every single day, day after day after day, your bank will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and your creative muscle will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually, it'll just be so easy. The ball will start to roll down the hill on its own, and inspiration will start to fly at you from every which direction because your bank is so large and the potential for the connections are so plentiful. The more you show up, the more inspiration shows up as well. Okay, these are the lessons that I personally learned from thinking about and trying to obtain more inspiration over the last decade of my career. I hope you've enjoyed them. Hit that like button if you did, subscribe if you want to see some more. For now, be well, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.